Greetings, students, and welcome to this episode of the Professor Travel Domestic Edition. I am your host, the Professor Travel, coming to you from Southern California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where we come as a community in order to talk and discuss more. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and ultimately to enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me at a variety of different social media sites, including but not limited to my website, which is at theprofessortravel.com, on YouTube, on Facebook, and now on TikTok. You can reach me there at theprofessortravel. If you're an Instagrammer, you can find me there at the_professor_travel. If you're a Twitter, then you can find me on Twitter at theprofessortr1. And then finally, if you're a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I am welcoming a visiting professor, a friend of mine from over at the University of West Virginia, George. Hello, George. How are you doing, sir?
Having a great day. How about yourself?
Awesome. I'm doing great. Thank you so much. For the benefit of the students who are watching us today, can you give us a little bit about your background, maybe some of your educational background, or maybe some places that you've traveled before?
Well, I graduated from a small school in the northern part of West Virginia by the name of West Liberty University. Now it was West Liberty State College back then. I received an English degree with a minor in history. After that, I left the state for a little while. I grew up in West Virginia, left the state, moved to Ohio, worked at another university there, Miami University, for about 8 years, just north of Cincinnati, and then moved back to West Virginia again and was employed at West Virginia University, where I also got my master's degree in athletic coaching, which is another passion of mine. Worked at a number of different schools within the state now, and back home, happy here. Again, I haven't traveled extensively, but based on just coaching baseball with a 10 to 12-year-old level all the way up through college, I have got to visit an abundance of states on the eastern part of our country. I've been over to the west some, but mostly the north, the mid-Atlantic states, down south. I've been to visit a lot of them.
So the majority of your travel has been primarily domestic, and with the kids that you've done a lot of coaching for. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome.
Our trips when I was growing up were to baseball games. Yeah.
That's awesome. And if the students haven't gotten a little clue by this point, the focus of this specific vlog and podcast is going to be on West Virginia. So let's start by learning a little bit about West Virginia. Can you share with me a little bit about the history? Because I know virtually nothing about West Virginia.
Well, West Virginia is one of those states that was born at the time of the Civil War. And many people say that we broke a constitutional law because we seceded from the state of Virginia. I, however, have a different perspective, and I got to listen to your Virginia podcast or discussion. And I say that West Virginia is the original state because we stayed true to the Union. It was Virginia who wanted to go to the Confederate States. And therefore, when the breakup was happening and the fighting was happening, it was happening between our states. What became Virginia, which I say was Virginia, and what Virginia seceded from. And it took place right there. So again, that was number one. We were born from the Civil War and came from what was Virginia only. Mason-Dixon line, talking about the history of this, there are certain things that, the North and the South, the Mason-Dixon line, it runs right through West Virginia. So brother fought brother during that Civil War. I mean, family members were very big into this. Some other history that you may know is the Hatfields and McCoys. Again, yeah. Kentucky and West Virginia and the family battles that raged through those families. And I'm sure you've seen and heard so much about that.
I've heard a lot about it. I just didn't know that it was in your specific area of the woods.
Right. And again, getting back to the Civil War, just to talk about that a little bit, actually, Abraham Lincoln said that we were actually the recognized government of Virginia at that time because we're part of the Union and stayed strong to our commitment. And then when they were trying to determine a name, there were a number of different names they came up with. West Virginia fits the song perfectly, just so you know. Take Me Home Country Roads, West Virginia. So if they would have had to sing that with Kanawha, which is a county in our state, that wouldn't have really gone along with the song, or Augusta, or Allegheny, which again, the mountains are great, or even Vandalia. So again, I'm really happy with the name that we got, West Virginia. Didn't go too far as the Western, but that's a little bit of our older history. There were some folks that contributed to the United States history, for example, though, when we talk about the speed of sound.
Oh, yeah.
Chuck Yeager.
Chuck Yeager, yeah.
He's a West Virginian, lived in Charleston, and he was the first person to break that barrier.
Nice.
And I don't know if anybody's seen Hidden Figures.
Oh, yeah, the movie. It's been amazing.
About traveling to space.
Yeah.
Katherine Johnson was a graduate of West Virginia. She lived in West Virginia, went to West Virginia State University, nice. As a undergrad, and then WVU. So she had a lot to do with space travel. And, West Virginia is very big in that, even though people don't realize it. Cool. When you talk about, again, some of our more recent information, the New River Gorge, which is one of the most scenic places you'll ever want to see. If anybody collected quarters, on the back of the West Virginia quarter was the New River Gorge. When it was built, it was the longest single arch steel bridge in the world. Now it's unfortunately number 4, so we've fallen down a little bit, but it's still a beautiful site. It saved 40 minutes of travel time from going from one side of the river to the other. The National Radio Astronomy is in Greenbank, which is one of the biggest, if not the largest. Oh my goodness, you're going to have to help me now. I can't think. Astronomy.
The observatory?
Yes.
Okay.
It's huge. It's on wheels. It can move, and it helps us to hear things that are going on in space. It's right down in the lower part of our state.
Nice.
Anybody that has cable, actually, from those dishes, the dish network and everything, you have to thank West Virginia, because we couldn't get that stuff before. So we had to rely on dishes to receive anything. We just celebrated an unfortunate time in West Virginia history just recently, but Marshall University, for example, lost their entire football team in a plane crash coming back in 1970. So, I'm going to talk about this briefly now, but the secret bunker for Congress and the president to stay at in case of a nuclear attack was right here in West Virginia.
That's crazy. That's amazing. Actually, I shouldn't say it's crazy. It's incredible that there's so much history in West Virginia, and I've only really barely touched on the touch of it. Talk to me a little bit about how, because everything I've seen from West Virginia is just so picturesque. Talk to me a little bit about the topography of it all, as far as it looks like it's mostly like woods and forests, and it's just gorgeous.
Right. It is a large forest. It is. We are the granddaddy of the mountain chain there. So most of our
topographical.
Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied there. But yeah, we are mountains. I mean, there are very few straight stretches when traveling. So our interstates, we have a number of interstates that pass through West Virginia. There is a lot of big bending. So for example, when I would travel from Ohio back to West Virginia, Ohio is pretty flat, straight line. You can see for miles and miles. In West Virginia, you have to stay on your toes there when you're driving because you're going uphill, you're going downhill, you're going around bends. It's beautiful. Like you said, the foliage at the fall is just unbelievable. And, again, it's a lot untapped. Again, there's so much space here that has not been utilized for business, and I appreciate that. I love the green, the trees, and the mountains.
That's awesome. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, you definitely want to come over to the YouTube channel in order to get a look at some of the pictures that are on this PowerPoint, because they are just extraordinary. Now, you order several states next to you, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, obviously, Kentucky, and Ohio. I didn't realize there were so many that were in your area that were right next to you. Is there anyone that you regularly do business with that's your primary focus, import export between one state and another?
Again, West Virginia is so unique. So for example, the very northern part of our state is very close to Pittsburgh, within 35-40 minutes. Okay. And there's a stretch of West Virginia that when you go from Ohio into West Virginia, you're in West Virginia for not even 5 miles, then you're back over into Pennsylvania. So it's very small in that northern panhandle. So we do work a lot with Pennsylvania, but again, on the eastern part, we're right there at Maryland. So we're right by the DC area also, and Baltimore. And then when you go down south, again, that's where it's a lot more rural. So some of the bigger cities you would be looking at outside would be like Richmond, Lexington, but those are still a couple of hours away from our borders there.
Okay, cool. Wonderful. Talk to me about the weather, because when I think about West Virginia, I always think about the winters in West Virginia. So talk to me about the seasons that you guys get.
Right, and we do. We are fortunate, and again, I love this. We do get all four seasons, and we get them regularly. Starting with the winter, because again, in January, we're getting ready to roll into that right now. Because we're close to, again, the northern part of the lake, the Great Lakes, we get a lot of lake effect snow our way, which it's about 2.5 hours. So we will get some major storms roll in from the lake. We will get snowstorms. We usually get maybe one big snow a year, and then every 4 years we may get like a huge snow of maybe 20 to 30 inches at one time, but those are very rare. We roll right into the spring. Spring is beautiful, as you can imagine, with everything coming back, but summertime, it's hot, but it's not extremely hot. We're looking at 80-degree temperatures. We will reach 90 every so often, but 80s, it's really comfortable. Sometimes, like I said, it gets really warm, but the fall is the most scenic place you want to be. Driving West Virginia in the fall when the leaves are changing, it's unbelievable. Motorcyclists love to come because we have a number of small little 2-lane highways that you can go and just see the foliage and spend hours just looking at that.
Talk to me a little bit about, do you guys actually have any like major natural disasters that you have to revisit on a yearly basis? Anything like tornadoes or blizzards or hurricanes or anything like that at all?
Again, we will see effects or remnants. We're very fortunate. I want to knock on as much wood as I can, but because of the mountains, we don't really get to see a number of tornadoes. If tornado would come in here and get blocked in and knocked back around, but we may have a touchdown every so often. Earthquakes, very rarely. We may have some after effects for maybe a little more over in the Virginia or on the East Coast side a little bit, but nothing major. Hurricanes, again, West Virginia is so uniquely located. Folks don't know whether to call us a Midwest state, a northern state, Atlantic, or South, because again, we're part of the North and we have all four seasons, but folks have that Southern charm, and like I said, we're right in the middle of everywhere.
Fantastic. So let's talk about culture. Now, this is one of the slides where I go into it just a ton about West Virginia with you. It seems like the predominant religion there is Christian. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
We also have a House of Gold in Moundsville, West Virginia, which it's a New Vrindavan Krishna place, and it's a very beautiful place, but that is one of the epicenters where Krishnas will go.
Okay, fantastic. And then, but there's, I'm sure, like a smattering of different religions all over the place.
Yes, absolutely.
Are there individual like large pockets of the Christian sect that are like specific? Like, because for example, I go over to Pennsylvania, and the Amish are very prominent in Pennsylvania. Are there any large sects that are prominent within West Virginia?
Well, again, I think it depends on the area where you're looking. Again, the Catholic religion is a very large portion of the diocese in Charleston, Wheeling area. Then, there are a number of Baptist and Protestants churches. So again, I think it's a mixture of everything. And all religions, I believe, are practiced here with everyone that has that freedom. And again, I think it's very good and it's very diverse here. So it's awesome.
Excellent. So let's move into the arts within West Virginia. And when I think of the arts, I'm thinking about singing, dancing, writing, acting. There's a lot of different people, famous people that come from there. But talk to me about the things that really speak to you in terms of the art of West Virginia.
Well, again, when I think of the arts, I think of a lot of different things. Again, as you talk about acting and the Actors Guild, Barney Fife, Don Knotts is right here where I live in Morgantown, West Virginia. So he's from here, and we have a nice little statue downtown for him. And he's very prominent. Again, I see that we have Joyce DeWitt from Three's Company. I'm very familiar with her. My aunt used to babysit her, so it's neat to see her on this and know that she was one of my favorite shows, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. But there also, as you see, we have an America's Got Talent winner.
Yeah, Lenda Eugene Murphy, I think is his name.
Came from a super small town in Logan, West Virginia, way down in the coal fields of West Virginia. And it was great to see him. And he regularly is around here. And there's a couple other. Brad Paisley is from the Northern Panhandle. He's very popular country music artist, Little Jimmy Dickens, and Jennifer Garner. So there are a number of folks who have come from here, but probably you didn't realize it. I think John Corbett from My Big Greek Wedding, or I believe it was. So there are a number of folks who have come from there. But I also think when I think of arts, I think about what West Virginia is more known for, which is pottery and glass. And I don't know if anybody has ever heard of Fiesta ware, but Fiesta ware is it's really a big type of dinnerware and dinner setware, and it's sold mostly here on the East Coast. But they're very amazing. You'll see them at a lot of different hotels use them. But that's the Homer Laughlin brand, which is in the Northern Panhandle. Glass blowing, again, we have this great little tour center that folks can visit along the interstate, where they will actually still blow glass and let you see, because it's still a very popular thing that is done here in West Virginia to make glassware. So, and again, we do have a theater and symphony. It's not as big. So unfortunately, most of the time we do have to go to other areas to visit the theater and see symphony. But we do have a touring symphony in West Virginia, and we do have a West Virginia theater that is traveling as well.
Okay, fantastic. Now, from what I understand, English is the predominant language of West Virginia. There's no like influence from like French, Spanish, or Native American at all. Is that pretty much? Yeah?
English is the number one language here spoken in West Virginia. Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of one of my favorite subjects, which is diet and food, pepperoni rolls. So I have a picture of them right on the right on the screen here. They look amazing. And obviously biscuits and gravy. I think you were one of the states that was founding it. So, I mean, again, like, what are the other foods that come to mind when you think of West Virginia?
Right. And again, and just to get on that pepperoni roll thing, that was really founded, it came from Italian immigrants. And it was because of the coal mine industry, and folks wanted something to eat in the coal mines, because once they went down, it was hard to come back up. They wanted something where they could get some food in them that they could take with them, that didn't have to be refrigerated, didn't have to be heated up. So again, they just started baking pepperoni in this bread. And it is unbelievable. There's actually a contest every year, just like there's the National Hot Dog Eating Contest, there's the pepperoni eating contest. So yeah, that's the big thing. Again, biscuits and gravy. You can't go anywhere in West Virginia without seeing biscuits and gravy. And again, there are so many different recipes. Some of the squirrel is a big ingredient to some of the biscuits and gravy that are made here in West Virginia. It's really good. Another thing that West Virginia has a number of hot dog stands or hot dog establishments. I worked in Fairmont, which is about 15 minutes down the road from Morgantown. It's another small community, has a 4-year school and a 2-year school. But in that little city alone, there were 8 hot dog stands. They're all still open. They all have this unique sauce. And West Virginia is big for putting coleslaw on their hot dogs.
Wow.
So it's like a spicy, almost chili sauce with coleslaw.
That sounds amazing, actually.
It is very good. It is very good.
And then in terms of sports and recreation within your area, no major football teams or baseball teams that you usually have to go out of the state in order to get that. But college appears to be the big sports location throughout your state, right?
Right. Our population doesn't really lend itself to having a professional team. So our colleges, again, our 2 major universities, West Virginia University and Marshall University, those are who our residents pull for, and that's who we follow. Again, we're close enough that the northern part of the state follows Pittsburgh because we're so close to Pittsburgh, but the southern part of our state is actually closer to Cincinnati. So a lot of folks, there's a split between the Cincinnati division versus the Pittsburgh for professional teams. We do have a number of minor league sports affiliates. So we do have 4-5 minor league baseball teams.
Okay.
In the state of West Virginia, one being here in Morgantown.
Are they farming? Are they kind of like farming leagues?
Yeah, they're the farm teams, the single, double, AAA teams, and they're all the late season. Actually, I shouldn't say all. The majority of them are late season teams. So that means that they're the college kids that just got drafted in June and they start playing in July, August, September. Okay. So we do follow that. But again, one thing to talk about when you talk about the state. So West Virginia University, which again is where I work and where I have my master's degree from, the football stadium here in town, it holds about 68,000 people on a game day. Now, not this year because of the pandemic, that doesn't happen. But in a normal year, on a Saturday when a football game is going on in town, our city has about 30,000 students. Mm-hmm. Our school has about 25,000 students.
Yes.
At that point, when we add that together, we would technically be one of the bigger cities in the state. Our biggest city is right around 55,000. On a game day, our stadium is the biggest city in the state of West Virginia. It holds, as I said, between 65, 70,000 fans, but we don't have any city that's that big. So they're very passionate. And again, that's what we do. We do back our state schools, and we back those student athletes that play for us.
And then, of course, other recreational sports within the area. Hiking, I can imagine, is probably big. Whitewater rafting, that I'm sure is just amazing, and canoeing. Like, what other things come to mind for you?
Well, again, in the wintertime, because we do have the seasons, we do have a number of ski resorts.
Oh, nice.
So we do have ski resorts and golf courses. Again, there's nothing like playing a lie on a golf course where the ball is at your chest level and you're down below it, and you get to take a baseball bat swing. So again, courses are very beautiful because they're so scenic. There's so many mountains around it. Again, you're not going to have all the flatness that you may see at a normal golf course. But again, we do have a couple of professional tours that go through West Virginia down at the Greenbrier. So again, those are the big ones. But again, you're right. Whitewater rafting, folks love to come to West Virginia on whitewater raft. They love to come and hike. And it's a beautiful place to go.
For the kids that might be out there, what type of is there an amusement park or anything that's in relative driving distance of West Virginia?
We don't have anything in West Virginia, but again, just north in Pittsburgh, we have Kennywood Park, which is one of the National Historic Parks. In Virginia, we're close to a Six Flags. And Kings Dominion, again, in Cincinnati, there's a Kings Island, which is a Dominion Park. So within an hour, you can get to one. If you're
that's not bad.
State, you can get there within an hour, or if you're in the lower part of the state, within 2 to 3 hours, you can get to a park.
Okay, perfect. And then before we leave this, let's talk about holidays. Now, when I think of holidays, I want to know specific to West Virginia, why is West Virginia got a couple of them that really shine?
Okay. Well, again, I listed on here Mother's Day and Father's Day, and that is because even though they are not holidays we get to take the day off for, but they are great recognition holidays, and you get to honor your parents. And Mother's Day, again, I live in Morgantown. There's a small town called Grafton. It's about a 20-minute drive from here. And the church there is the first church that was organized that recognized mothers. So the first Mother's Day was actually founded in West Virginia, at Grafton, West Virginia.
Yes.
Father's Day, likewise, again, in Fairmont, where I was working, there is a church there that is the recognized place for Father's Day recognition. So Mother's Day and Father's Day were both founded based on churches in West Virginia and what they did to honor the parents. Even Grandparents' Day, which isn't as recognized as those two, was actually founded about an hour south on the way to Charleston. So again, West Virginia has a big part of family, and it is one that recognizes family, and it's become a national tradition to do that on these holidays.
Great.
And another, it's not a national or a state holiday, but it's a West Virginia day that we recognize, and it's Bridge Day. We talked about the New River Gorge in a little bit, and I believe we'll talk about it here shortly, but the New River Gorge actually shuts down. I said it made travel go from 40 minutes going down and around and across the small bridge back up to the mountains to the other side to about a 45-second drive. And because it is so long and so tall, it's over 850 feet high over or below it, they shut it down once a year, right when it finished in late October. They choose the weekend. And if you're qualified, you can base jump from it. Or you can bungee jump from it. Or for those that are really good at rappelling, you can rappel down. So the bridge is shut down. You're given a number. It's blocked off for miles, and you just get the opportunity to jump and take a parachute, jump off of the bridge. They actually have it set up also where you can walk under now with cables and stand above and look at the beauty and the scenery of it.
Yeah, my fear of heights isn't working well with me on this, so I'll leave that to the more adventurous types. So, but thank you. Now, alluding to what you said earlier, and thanks for sharing that, though. For alluding to what you said earlier about when the stadium gets packed, it's like one of the largest cities. As we can see from the population map on here, most of West Virginia does appear to be rural or sparsely populated for the most part, but there are a couple of little pockets I can see on here. Like if we're like right here where I'm circling on the map, what is that location?
Okay, let's see. That's Charleston. That's our state capital.
Okay.
Marshall University is just a little west of that.
Okay,
So
that's
that's
this one here.
yes, that's Huntington. So Charleston's our state capital. It is the largest area in mass of where our population is. But again, the capital changed in West Virginia. So it originally used to be in the northern part of the state in that very top clip. It was Wheeling, West Virginia, which is circled also, which is one of our bigger cities.
Okay.
But then it was a barge that went along the Ohio River, which, in case people don't know, the Ohio River is actually part of West Virginia because all the islands in it belong to West Virginia.
Okay.
And then Charleston is where it finally came to be the capital city.
And what is this little population center over here on the east side?
Okay, and that is Martinsburg and Charlestown. So
Okay.
we have a Charleston, which is right there, and then Charlestown and Martinsburg, which that's right by the Maryland and DC metropolis. So a lot of the folks that live there actually commute and work in the DC and Maryland area, Baltimore.
Excellent. Excellent.
And
Now,
then
when I
the
was,
dot,
oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say the dot, if you want to go back just one little
Sure.
bit, right where you see that little L part, that's Morgantown, which is again the university city here in town, where West Virginia University is. So those are the three biggest areas of population.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you again for sharing. Now, when I look at employers in the state, obviously, University of West Virginia, one of the largest employers within the state directly, the healthcare system, CAMC, and the West Virginia Department of Transportation really popped out to me in terms of the number of people that they employ within West Virginia. Are there any other companies, colleges, healthcare, hospitals, or anything like that that I've left out?
Well, again, West Virginia, we do have two hospitals here in Morgantown, but again, the West Virginia hospital system, which is spread throughout the whole state, is one of the larger ones. Again, the CAMC Health Hospital. We also have a company called Mylan Pharmaceuticals, which was the largest generic drug maker in the country. So that's based in Morgantown. They do have a large number and have been working with a number of different pharmaceutical companies now. But again, it was founded as just a generic pharmaceutical company, but is now doing branded drugs as well.
Excellent. Now, in terms of travel and transportation, how is driving in the state? I mean, are you dealing with a lot of major traffic issues or like two-lane highways, or how does this work?
Well, if you ask a West Virginia, especially someone who lives in one of our big cities, what traffic is like, they would say terrible. But from someone who has traveled and been to other areas where there is actually traffic, it's nothing compared to that. Our interstate highways are 4 lanes, 2 and 2. So there's rarely any traffic on there. If you could talk about traffic, there's never bumper to bumper unless there's an accident, which is, again, luckily very rare. Most of our 2-lane highways that we travel back and forth on. Again, the original Route 40, the old national road, which went from the eastern part of the country all the way over to the Midwest, passed through Wheeling. So that was the founding part of the interstate systems. Again, we do have I-70, 77, 79, 64, 68, 81, all pass through West Virginia at some point. Some very small parts of the state because of where it's located. But again, the traffic is nothing. Travel is, again, depending upon your very hilly, very mountainous, very curvy, but very safe and good.
What is the Virginia Hyperloop agreement?
Okay, this is something, again, this is some new history that just happened within the last few weeks.
Okay.
Virgin Hyperloop is that train system that can get traveling up to 600 miles an hour. And they're saying that it can travel from Pittsburgh to Chicago 40 minutes, 60 minutes, which is basically just like air travel.
Yeah.
And from New York to DC in less than 30 minutes. So they've been trying to find places for testing. Well, this is where they're going to test, in West Virginia. And part of it is because of the combination of West Virginia University and Marshall University and our engineering programs, and trying to work with them. So they've purchased some land. So they're going to start this Hyperloop, and it's actually vacuum tunnels of like a tram being forced through that at very high rates of speed. So that's coming soon.
Very cool stuff. And then you also have listed on here Chuck Yeager and Katherine Johnson.
Yeah, Chuck Yeager. Again, I just wanted to point out the transport, how they have affected travel. Again, going at the speed of sound, and of course, are traveling to outer space. So those Excellent. Are two West Virginians that helped with how we travel, I thought.
Excellent. Now, in terms of international airports, if you need to do an international airport, there's not necessarily one directly in West Virginia. You have to go to Pittsburgh, or you have to go to Dulles Reagan, BWI, right, in Maryland. But they do have a regional airport out of Charleston. Is that correct?
Right. Actually, it's the Chuck Yeager Airport. And we also have two smaller airports that folks can fly out of in Clarksburg and in Morgantown. It's just that they are, you start out with little jumper planes, and then they would take you to the larger areas, to the regionals. So, but yeah, we do have to travel, but again, it's not too far.
Excellent. So let's just really quickly touch on government within the state of West Virginia. Reliably red, it seems, as far as federal goes. I assume for state and local, it's pretty much the same, except for maybe Charleston, because of the high population center, it might lean a little bit more blue than red. Am I right on that, or is that incorrect?
Well, you're right, and it's strange. Okay, we, in West Virginia for a while there, they only voted blue, and then they switched to red. So I think in this last election, for example, it was 70-30 Republican, the Democrat in the presidential. However, our governor, who is a Republican now, when he was elected in his first term, he was a Democrat, and he switched to the Republican Party while in office. So it was very strange, because the governor before that was who is now Senator Manchin, who was
Democrat. And he is a Democrat.
So, well, again, it's strange in that, again, the state is a very blue collar state. So lots of unions with the coal mine and steel industry that we've had. So again, it's one that was related to the Democratic Party, and again, voted that way for a number of years. But again, it's a very, as you know, religious state, very conservative state. So again, the last couple of elections, it's been geared towards the red state.
Excellent. And then in terms of natural resources, I think it's pretty universally known that coal is like one of the driving forces behind West Virginia. It's been that way since its founding, I think, for the most part. And then natural gas is another one. You also put on here steel mills are a real center point for the state as well. I assume that's up towards the north, closer to the Pittsburgh area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
So, again, in West Virginia, coal, we are the largest exporter in the U.S. of coal. We supply the most coal. And because of that coal, it's really good for making steel. So again, from the Ohio River, which starts in Pittsburgh, if you went up through Pittsburgh, which of course, is a steel town, and then down back as it winds back through lower through West Virginia along Ohio, you would find a steel mill on either side of the road of the river every 10 miles. So the town that I lived in, grew up in, was a coal town. It was Windsor Power owned it. We had the company store even when I grew up back then, where you would get your groceries based on how well you worked during that week. And my grandfather was a coal miner. My dad was a steel mill worker. So, and right at the bottom of where the coal was coming out, they basically took it right over to the steel mill and used that for firing. So the steel industry isn't as big as it was, unfortunately. We've lost a lot of jobs and population wise because of that, but there's still steel mills scattered in and about.
Would you say the same of the coal industry as well? Is it as robust as it used to be, or is it diminishing right now?
It's diminishing some, again, but now we have a lot of fracking in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So the the gas companies are coming in, but again, coal is still a very big industry here in West Virginia. There are still folks who choose to go to the coal mines and work as opposed to further their education, because again, the coal industry, you can make a lot of money in that very quickly.
Would you say the people that work in the coal industry, for the most part, tend to be like legacy, where it's like, well, my father did it and my grandfather did it and so forth and so on?
That is a very big contributing factor to that, is because the family knows that, and the family knows that you can make the money and you can earn and protect and provide for your family.
And I think that's actually a really good point, because I think for those who might be like in favor of talking about natural resources or even renewable resources, they don't necessarily understand maybe as much the economic impact or the family impact that this might have. And it's really important, I think, for us all to have a conversation about that and better understand, how we can, how that conversation can go in order to be able to understand, first off, changing an entire person's family dynamics and what they've known for generations, and ultimately what's going to be good for the environment moving forward in the future. So I think that's a conversation worth having, and I think it's something that we have to continue to look forward to as we move forward as a country.
Exactly. I totally agree.
So let's talk about education. I was really quite stunned, actually, I'm going to be honest, by the number of really higher education locations within West Virginia. Obviously, University of West Virginia, West Virginia State University, and Charleston, University of Charleston, that is, Bethany College, and Marshall. I didn't even think of all of the larger higher education institutions, because for me, I made a judgment about West Virginia being that it was so rural and that it's so lush and foresty, that there aren't a lot of really major institutions of higher education. That was my fault for doing that. But can you tell us a little about the higher education system within West Virginia?
Right. And again, I've worked at four of them actually in the state now. So again, I worked at West Liberty, which I listed on here. It's actually older than the state itself. It was actually founded as part of Virginia. So it was the northernmost college in the state of Virginia at the time. But again, we have a large number of liberal arts universities, both private and state, but there's very small settings. For example, Bethany College that you have listed there, that's very near my hometown. And Bethany and West Liberty are 5 miles apart. Bethany is a very small Christian school, anywhere between 400 to 800 students maybe a year. West Liberty, it's a state school. It operates, again, on that regional premise. So we get a lot of folks from Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia that attend West Liberty, but most of them commute. So you're looking at about anywhere between 1,500 to maybe 2,000 students max a year. That is how many students go there. And then again, as you go down the state, West Virginia University, which is our biggest school in the state, which has about, when you look at all of our campuses, because we have a campus in Morgantown, one in Kaiser, West Virginia, which is a community and technical college, and then one in Beckley, which is a 4-year institution as well, very highly engineering related school. We have about 30,000 that go to that school. Marshall is our other huge university. And again, that is about 15,000 students to go there. But all those other schools will have anywhere between 800 to 1,200, maybe upwards of 3,000 students. So again, they're very much smaller scale university systems, nothing very big. But again, it gives students an opportunity to go and experience small town school if that's what they want. And again, the good news is they're regionally located throughout the state, where students have easy access to commute from home if they want to do that.
Excellent. Now, one of the things I also noticed here was the literacy rate was maybe not as high as we want it to be, but then again, part of that could be, like as we were saying earlier, if you have a family that has primarily just for generations gone into one industry, whether it's the steel industry or the coal industry, that's been the focus of training that person and making sure they have the skills in order to raise a family and do everything with that, as well as the rural nature of the state. Maybe those are contributing factors to the literacy level not being as high as we would like, but still 86% is nothing to seize at when you look at the world over. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And it's been on the increase too, which is good. It's gone up over the last 10 years. So that is a positive into what is being done at the high school level to prepare students. So that's good.
Excellent. And then, of course, safety and security. To the best of my knowledge, there's not really been any foreign or domestic terrorism threats that have sparred from West Virginia, at least not within the last 200 years.
Right. Right.
um, and then in terms of the crime rate, it's relatively low crime, although there in the past, I want to say there had been some uh, what do you call it, like narcotic issues or some abuse of
Yes.
drugs.
Unfortunately, yes. Oxycodone and the pushing of drugs. But again, it was actually doctors who were trying to push that through the state of
Yeah.
West Virginia. And there was some discussion with that. I know President Barack Obama came in to talk. There was a book written about the painkillers that were being utilized here and pushed through the state of West Virginia. And luckily, those folks were prosecuted, and it's gotten better. But again, unfortunately, it's still prevalent. Not where we
Well,
want to be.
well, let's end on a high note then, really quick. Okay, I want to take it from that level, and I was like, okay, so let's do and I didn't prep you for this, so forgive me for this, but let's do a quick 1-minute elevator speech. If
Okay.
I have a free plane ticket to West Virginia, and I'm like, okay, I want to just go there and experience West Virginia, sell me on it. Why would I want to go to West Virginia?
Well, again, one thing is the folks of West Virginia. That's the number one thing I think is that's our number one resource are the people that live here. Again, I told you we don't have an identity in West Virginia. People consider us a southern state, a Midwestern state. We're from the Northeast, you're a Mid-Atlantic. We don't have any specific region where we're talked about because, again, the folks that live here are our own folks. We're our own people, and we are kind to everyone. That's the one thing you'll see is people who break down or have trouble on the highway, you will see people from West Virginia stop to help them. You won't see that in a lot of other places. It's like roll up your windows and just keep going. But the folks here in the small town will treat you like your family, even though they don't know you. So you want to come here just to meet the people. And again, the scenery here, 80% of our land is covered with forestry. And if you want to make a specific time to come in the fall and just take a drive, stay at one of those mountain resorts that we have and just drive through our highways and look at what's happening. There's so much beauty and natural resources here. If you want to come in the summertime and you want to take some adventure, go hiking when you come to West Virginia. And I won't do the whitewater rafting because I never learned how to swim. I'm one of those guys that I told my spouse, I'll coach the land, you coach the air and sea, because I'm like you, I'm afraid of heights and don't like to swim, but I'll take hiking into a ballpark at any time. But again, it's a great place. And again, we're so close to so many different things. We do touch 5 different states. We are so close to Pittsburgh. We're so close to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. We're so close to Richmond, which for anybody that's watching this and says, oh, West Virginia, I have family that live in Richmond. Richmond is in Virginia. West Virginia is its own state. We have so many folks that forget that. But again, it's a wonderful place to visit. It's got beautiful landscape. And it's got some really, really old past that folks don't realize because, again, we are one of the newer, we are the 35th state, but we're actually there at the beginning. We were part of Virginia at that point. So again, it's got some major history. The first land battle was fought in Philippi, West Virginia. So it's just down the road from here too. And again, it's just a beautiful place. I'm glad I moved back. I love my time in Ohio and I love traveling to other states, but I really like living here in West Virginia.
Well, George, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain to us a little bit about West Virginia. I know I learned a lot, so I thank you so much for taking the time to share this with myself and my students. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for my students that are out there, if you have any questions, comments, anything that you'd like to express to me, please feel free to send me an email at scott@theprofessortravel.com. If you're on YouTube right now and you want to be notified when new videos go up, click that little bell icon right above us in order to be notified. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything extra and it actually helps out the channel. So thank you so much for that in advance. And then if you like this content and you'd like to see more of it, give us a thumbs up. And then finally, if you're listening to us on the podcast, please feel free to give us a rating and a review. We always appreciate the feedback. But until next time, I am Scott. This is the Professor Travel, and make every day a travel adventure. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.